In today's Farm Report, some countries have been banning the import of U.S. poultry, and that situation's been exacerbated by the West Coast port issues that we're currently seeing. Cindy Zimmerman with AgriPulse has more.
The ban on U.S. poultry imports by China and some other countries due to the discovery of high-path avian influenza in western states is definitely a concern, but the West Coast port situation is a bigger issue, according to USDA Undersecretary Michael Skuse.
Right now we have a situation with high-path avian influenza on the West Coast. Unfortunately, because of that, we have experienced some of the markets being closed to U.S. poultry. In California, that's an issue for two reasons. One, because one of the detections was in California, but two, most of our poultry products that are going to Asia and that part of the world go through the West Coast ports, and you can't ship product through the West Coast ports if California is shut down, and Oregon and the state of Washington. Which leads me to the other situation that we're currently facing. We have a slowdown in our West Coast ports because of labor that we are currently working on. There's some contract negotiations that are taking place now. Hopefully they will be wrapped up in the very near future so that we can open up all of those West Coast ports and get the rest of our agricultural products that are sitting there and some waiting to be imported, loaded and unloaded. So we do have a situation out there that I know that we are all monitoring very closely.
Skuse expects the poultry industry to experience only a temporary setback from the Chinese ban.
If you look at the demand worldwide for poultry and the growth for the exports, the poultry industry in the last year has seen some tremendous growth in their exports, again, double-digit growth in exports. And if you look at the prices for poultry today versus 2-3 years ago, the poultry market is very strong. So hopefully the ban will not be a long one.
The Undersecretary for Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services spoke to farmers in southwest Missouri this week in one of his appearances to stress the importance of Trade Promotion Authority for the president.
What happens on trade in 2015 is in fact going to shape the future of agriculture. So it is important that we bring home the TPP, we get Trade Promotion Authority, and we break down some of the barriers that we're facing in some of these other countries.
Reporting for AgriPulse, I'm Cindy Zimmerman.
Farmers over the next decade will probably not plant as many acres each year as they did this past season, at least to the major crops. This, according to the new edition of the Agriculture Department's 10-year projections. Analyst David Stallings helps put that report together, and he says farmers, inspired by those high prices in 2013, early 14, planted 258.5 million acres. Stallings says with prices down the way they are, that could drop by 3.8 million this spring. And since prices are not expected to improve much, if at all,
we expect crop acreage to go down pretty sharply between 2015 and 2016, and then remain more or less constant through the projection period. And that's a reflection of the lower prices that we're going to see for farm products.
Planted acreage expected to hover right around 246 million acres all the way through 2024. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
The U.S. Grain Council recently held its winter meeting in Costa Rica, where it highlighted some of the issues from 2014 and where they're going to move in 2015. Cindy Zimmerman with AgriPulse has more.
The U.S. Grains Council held its winter meeting last week in Costa Rica, where Chairman Ron Gray says it was a time to take a look back at last year and assess export opportunities.
Just this past year, to see how the market works is very interesting. Obviously, there were some constraints on DDGS and corn exports to China. What happened was that grain sorghum picked up a lot of the slack there because it met their limitations on genetically modified. And although we have talked about the problems with DDGS into China, actually at the end of the year, our exports were one of the highest years for DDGs on record. So the Grains Council participation in resolving and mitigating the complexities of that trade were very important.
Gray, who's a farmer from Illinois, told All Ag News that it's important for producers to be involved in trade policy.
You know, I think combines would be easier to fix than trade policy for the most part. But our President he loves to say there's not a silver bullet. We use silver buckshot, and there's just lots of problems out there, and you're not sure what will be the problem that you need to resolve next. But we try to address the next problem so that we can keep trade moving. The DDGS just this past year, the Grains Council was instrumental in mitigating that process so that trade could continue, and they developed new markets. They were standing there to make sure that the grain sorghum could get into China and make China aware of that market. They've serviced markets throughout the world in Latin America and Mexico, and even Canada is a great trading partner. And so we service these markets every day, and it's the growing demand for corn that elevates our prices back home.
Reporting for AgriPulse, I'm Cindy Zimmerman.